Hey everyone, it's been a little bit over a week and the community's engaged with some great feedback that I've been working into the build, so I really wanted to take the time to share it. I think it's made a lot stronger build overall. The sheet DPS is down overall, but POB has us at around 5.5 million damage per second against the pinnacle boss with 50% resists. So overall, while sheet DPS is down, I feel like we're a lot stronger and more consistent. The biggest change was brought on by a comment someone had made asking how the life regen rate felt when casting, because I was specking so far into cast speed, I was essentially being limited by the rate of regen of the life. And I did some investigation, and they were totally right. Like, it was a bit clunky, and we weren't able to hit our full cast speed. So we moved to Adziri's Acuity for instant leech on crits. So we removed that time barrier and we reduced some crit nodes across the board to only go to about a 60% max crit chance on cheat. And we leverage ambush or critical weakness to ensure that we have 100% crit uptime for those gloves to always hit those crits for instant leech. This solved two problems. One, we're able to use Savored Blood now, which has 45% extra life leech at the cost of slower regen, but that doesn't matter to us because it's instant. And we're also able to run reduced rate recovery maps, which we weren't able to do before. It was the one map we couldn't really run. Now we don't have to worry about it at all. We worked in some low life effect scaling and arcane surge now that we didn't have to worry about our cast speed. So we're running pain attunement to scale up that crit damage bonus, as every time we cast, our health drops down below low life threshold, and we get the extra bonus from pain attunement. Same idea with Final Barrage. And finally, we were able to work Blink into the build. It's definitely not needed, but it provides some great QOL for me. It felt nice. We lost some defense, but I feel like we made it up with Melting Maelstrom providing that instant, 2500 life or mana back. So without further ado, let's jump into the build and the changes.
All right, so as we said, Atrizi's Acuity is really the biggest item we shifted the build around to give us that instant leech from crit. We lost a gear slot, but luckily it does provide us intelligence and it does provide critical hit chance. So we were able to pick those stats up. Those are probably the two most important stats to pick up on it. If you can get a sweet corrupt, all better. Other than that, our gear is mainly focused around scaling spell level of chaos spells to get that level Hexblast up, providing enough life to be able to cast Hexblast. And then after that, cast speed, increased spell damage, increased chaos or lightning damage. Extra cold damage is great for freezing things, but it's no mean required. And maximum mana to allow for scaling via archmage. The critical hit chance for spells is required up to 60% on Hexblast. Once you hit 60%, then you're all set to go. You don't need to scale it any farther. So however you do that is up to you. And then the ward looks very similar, where we're increasing our spell damage, our chaos damage, getting spell levels, and in this case, we're doing spell damage bonus with mana and cast speed. For our amulet, we are allocating pure power to continue to scale off the intelligence that we're building up and get an extra 2% lightning off of our 250 intelligence. Other than that, again, we're trying to bump up our spell levels to get the biggest hex blast that we can, increase our cast speed so we can do it faster, spirit to enable multiple auras, and blink and things of that nature. Blink not required, just nice to have. Spell damage for obvious reasons. The one thing to note is that every time you up your spell level, you have to be careful with Hex Blast to make sure that you have enough health. This costs 1408. We have 1711. So you need to make sure that you have enough life to cast your Hex Blast. So we could even shed some life off of this right now and trade it for other stats. For example, on our boots, we're getting 132 life, but we really don't need to be anymore. As long as we stay above the ability to cast Hex Blast, we should be all set. On our main body, we have two options here. This is generally what I've been running, but I'm testing out running the Shaman Mantle. But essentially, you need Spirit to keep the auras up, and Archmage and everything else. Intelligence to continue to scale your mana, and then resistances as needed. I've been trying out the Shaman Mantle instead for a little bit of extra Spirit for Blink, but it costs us about 1,000 energy shield, so I'm not sure if it's worth it, but I'm really enjoying Blink. And because we swapped over to Melting Maelstrom, we can instantly recover our mana, which is acting as our health due to Mind Over Matter. So we get a lot more defenses from there. So I've been pretty safe with using this, but I have to upgrade this if I want to continue to use it. From there, we're using Ingenuity to scale up our rings. Our rings are generally providing whatever resistances we need, mana to continue pushing Archmage up, increased either lightning damage or chaos, cast speed and rarity, and that's mirrored over here on this ring, so just kind of an omni tool for whatever sort of resistances you might need. On the offhand swap, we have a Chiming Staff, which exists to provide us Sigil of Power. So before going into a boss fight, as you saw in some of the intro videos, you can go ahead and drop a Sigil of Power, and then you can use Soul Offering to get more damage for a bit. So looking at our gems, we've got Chaos Bolt, which is just running Chain and Chaos Mastery. I usually use it in a pinch for if I don't have enough health and I just need to instantly leech a little bit. You can just hold right click for a second to hit some crits, get your life back up. For Hexblast, this is our bread and butter skill. For mobbing, we're using Magnified Effect and Ambush. All times we're using Considered Casting for more spell damage, Inspiration to reduce the cost of life to use the spell, and Life Tap to convert it to a life cost. When we go to a Pinnacle boss, we swap over to Concentrated Effect and Arcane Tempo. You don't really need to do that for map bosses by any means, but for Pinnacle boss, I would recommend swapping over to Concentrated Effect and Arcane Tempo to make sure that you're leeching enough life back as you hit, and it greatly ups your damage per second. So, next up, we have Blasphemy, and Blasphemy is socketed with Despair and Temporal Chains. I believe the order matters quite a bit. If you have Despair on the left, Temporal Chains is blown up by Hexblast, which means you benefit from Despair when the damage is applied. We use Encumbrance and Ritualistic Curse to aid the amount that we're slowing things down and to make the aura bigger. Archmage, supported by Lightning Mastery, a tip from the community, so we could hit a breakpoint at level 21 here to get 9% scaling. So that was a great tip. And we're using a corrupted one because it saves a lot of money instead of buying a level 20, which we don't need. Soul Offering is here to give us a more spell damage buff before we go and fight a boss, so we can go ahead, as we showed with that swap, and get that extra damage. We support that with Dance Macabre and Ablation to get even more damage scaling. Blink, completely optional, but is a great quality of life with Ingenuity to just be able to use it more. Grim Feast is to provide sustain as we kill stuff, to pick up the orbs. Skeletal Cleric on the swap to allow us to sacrifice to Soul Offering with Last Gasp in case they get damaged for whatever reason. We can still go ahead and cast them. Essence Drain exists to apply Chaotic Freeze to a boss, which we support with Persistence to keep it on. This allows us to freeze a boss with our Hexblast damage, specifically the Chaos side, because the Chaos will contribute to freeze. And finally, Eye of Winter is supported by Unleash, Withering Touch, and Cold Exposure. Unleash, so when we use it, we have multiple Eyes of Winter coming out that are applying Critical Weakness and Withering Touch. Cold Exposure, again, to just help freeze a boss as needed. Alright, so for our passes, we have quite a bit of difference, but I will go through them all. So starting off, we swapped over to the Energy Shield side of the starting tree, gave up a little damage at the start for survivability, but it allows us to save some points, and we weren't losing out on that much damage. We make sure to pick up Mana Blessing to keep our mana scaling up for our use of Archmage. But over here, we're using Zone of Control again to increase the area effect of our curses and provide Hindered, so we're able to slow things down a little bit more with Temporal Chains and Encumbrance and Hindered. Our enemies are moving pretty slow. On this side, we're picking up Royal for extra spell area of effect. This is really just a quality of life for mapping. It makes it just a lot nicer for Hexblast to blow up a bunch of things. You could also use Reverberation or Repulsion here, but we are needing this extra 5 passive points until we fix some gear. On this side, we come down into pick up critical damage bonus. This is the first time we're using the weapon set points on 1. So essentially all of the damage from like critical hits and things like that will be on 1. We're never doing damage on swap 2. So we're able to safely put all of those points into there. For swap 2, we're really focusing on skill effect duration. So our Sigil of Power and our Soul Offering lasts for longer. So we pick up gems, wherever we can. In general, for gems, we need a baseline of 60% critical hit chance. Once you hit that baseline of 60% critical hit chance, you're really just looking for extra critical damage bonus. I like Area of Effect as an additional line, as it helps with just quality of life and Hexblast being able to hit a bunch of things. and then you can use chaos damage, spell damage, or lightning damage, whatever you can find, really. We're using a From Nothing over here to allocate Arcane Intensity and Raw Mana without pathing to them. By no means is that required. You could just lose a gem and spend the extra few points to get over and pick it up. We utilize Patient Barrier for extra energy shield, for defensive layer. Whispers of Doom is required as you are using Temporal Chains and Decay, so to use both, you need to make sure that you're using Whispers of Doom. Coming over to this side, we are now, as we mentioned in the intro, using Final Barrage for a low life effect, and we're using Overzealous because the mana cost of skills is pretty irrelevant because Hexblast is a life cost, not a mana cost, so it doesn't increase it, but it does give us that extra cast speed. And we're always at low life when we are casting because we pay for the life before we cast, so we're always considered at low life when we're casting. We're using Storm Charge to help get that extra critical hit chance up to 60 that we needed, but we're also getting some extra elemental damage. In this case, we're scaling our lightning damage and our cold damage. Some elemental pen in here is always nice to have. And we also are grabbing Breaking Point now, which is allowing us to have a longer duration of shock and freeze, as well as building them up more quickly. It is notable that we are running an Against the Darkness here that is scaling on our notables. We're able to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notables here. So it's giving us 55 spirit and 20% extra chaos damage. So that's one of the reasons we're so focused on this area right here. We're also using Touch the Arcane for an Arcane Surge effect and the extra chance to get it on crits because we are always critting. This allows us to hit Arcane Surge, which is a more modifier, which is providing us about 16% more cast speed whenever we're in Arcane Surge. I don't really care much about the mana regeneration rate. Picking up gems again wherever we can. As I mentioned, you could also take Repulsion or Reverberation instead of Royal. I just need that extra 5 points right now. Down here, we're using Pain Attunement. Again, because we're always on low life when we're casting, this is a more modifier for our damage. So that's a fantastic addition to the build that the community suggested. And then on this side of the tree, again, we're using our weapon set passive points on 1 to increase our critical hit chance. We're picking up Heavy Frost for ignoring elemental resistances when something's frozen, and for getting faster freeze build-up and doing more damage when stuff's frozen. Finally, Harsh Winter is on skill set 2 to increase the skill effect duration for Sigil of Power and Soul Offering. And finishing it out, we pick up 2 more gems down here, and we spec into Dark Entries for an extra level on our Hexblast, and Throat Seeker for some extra critical damage bonus, which we end up scaling with Pain Attunement. But yeah, I found this build to be a lot more consistent. It does quite a bit more damage, and it addresses some of the shortcomings we had with waiting for Life Leech. The last gem that is worth mentioning is we have a Megalomaniac here, which is giving us Savored Blood and Critical Exploit. I think Savored Blood is very, very useful in this build because we are getting our Life Leech instantly. The 35% increase is huge, but the Life Leech rate being 20% slower isn't a downside to us because it's always instant. And we're also just easily picking up Critical Exploit, which we could pick up if we needed to. Just however you choose to get 60% crit is really all you need to worry about. That's the overview and that's the updates. If you have some thoughts or things that you feel like might make it better, please share. Yeah, I want to share it with everyone. Thanks and have a good day.